Hello, everyone. Okay, today, after the inauguration and all that, I'm going to talk about a little bit about President Trump's speech and some of the things he said and what it represents. One of the main things that everyone is talking about is after he signed all those executive orders, I think some people say 200, it seems impossible. But one of the things that people are saying is that is wokeism dead now? Can what Elon Musk called the mind woke virus or something like that, can that be dead? Is the woke nightmare over? So I'm going to say a few words about that, and but before I do that, I just want to actually emphasize one point, and that I'm going to argue that yes, there has been a changing of the guards, yeah, but in international politics, in geopolitics, I'm going to argue that really, in terms of the relationship of the United States to the rest of the world, nothing much has changed. What has changed is that what we now seem to be, a lot of people very comfortable saying American imperialism, since the 1990s, which was in the hands of global corporations, meaning that the corporations, the financial global corporations, were practically the main beneficiaries of how the world economy was run. That has changed hands slightly, so to speak, as it were, from solely global financial corporations to also to include now the United States as a country, meaning that from the 1990s, corporations really didn't care much about the country itself, the United States. They administered the empire. But I want to argue that there has been a truce now. And what has changed is that the country is going to benefit too, or that's the pretension at any rate, that the country is going to benefit too, as a country, not just the global financial corporations. In other words, there has been a truce here, and I'll explain why. They're going to share, as it were, the benefits. This is how I see it. In terms of us in other countries, I think that nothing much is going to change, really. Okay, let me see if I can explain. In short, from the 90s, the question of who benefits from the empire, global financial corporations. From now on, who benefits from the empire? Both the country and the corporations. There have been, the way I see it, no winners or losers here. There has been a truce between the big global financial power, world governance, and the nation state. In other words, globalism is not dead, it's in remission a little bit. What is not dead in America and the United States, the wish to continue to be the one sole superpower, the dominant power in the world, that is now they're going to share that. Okay, so they took back a little bit of the power that only the global corporations had. The sole hegemon that power went from the United States at the very beginning to global finance, and now it appears that it's going to go back to the United States together, and that is the intention, at any rate, of President Trump's his win. Okay, so in order for me to explain this a little bit better, so you see sort of how it happened. A few bullet points, okay? I'm not going to go into great detail. I have done this in many videos, so just the bullet points, okay, as a sort of a summary. Okay, end of World War II. The United States is supreme, okay? The international organizations are built, the United Nations, all that, okay, after the Second World War. We are told that, and we believe it because we have no reason to disbelieve it at that point, given the situation in Europe after a devastating war. We are told that the international organizations, the UN and so on, are being created in order to set up, in order to benefit kind of all nations, peace and so on. So first, international organizations built to help all. That was the idea, okay? Although, of course, the CIA, state within a state, was also created in 1948. So, international organizations first. Gradually, the impact of those international organizations moved on to benefit more and more the United States as a country. The United States, the beneficiary, above all other countries. I don't want to argue now, well, why not? They were paying for this, but the main result is that they are the beneficiaries of those international corporations. And after a while, it was as if they had been created in order to benefit the United States, especially from the 1970s onwards. But roughly from, let's say, the late 40s or 50s until the 90s, the United States had the sole power, let's say. Now, from the 1990s until 2016, power moved. Some cynics will say it was stolen, it was hijacked, it was, in any case, it was transferred. That sole hegemon power was transferred to the global financial elite. This is the neocon period. Okay, little by little, the benefits of being a superpower, the US as a country, those benefits that it had enjoyed, the country, it was no longer actually benefiting from those. The beneficiary was no longer the United States as a country, but the global elite. Okay, but people don't see that the global elite doesn't have a country to exercise world governance. They were using, this is my contention, I can be wrong, but they were using the government and the structures of the United States as a country. So all we saw was the United States as a country. And we even called it the American Empire. But in fact, the country and its people were being very much left behind, the people of the United States. The goal was no longer the well-being of the United States as a country, of the people of the United States that benefited. Manufacturing went abroad and so on, all that. It looked as if the country itself was the beneficiary, but it wasn't. All we saw was that the United States, that is what we saw, just the country. But what was really happening? Let's see. We have to sort of subdivide this period. So, 1990s to 2016. You remember the third way, Clinton and Blair. We thought that it was called the third way because the left, as it were, was moving center. In other words, no longer to be, especially in Britain, no longer to be necessary for the Labour Party to be a socialist or a democratic socialist country or anything like that. They moved to the center. We thought that that was the meaning of third way. No, it wasn't. The beneficiaries moved from the nation state to that supranational financial global elite. That is where the power went. But this was from 1990 until 2008, the crisis, that was the neocons golden era, as it were. The gradual transfer of power from individual nation states to global finance, global corporate power. That was almost complete by 2008. But not quite because this was gradual, yeah? And you will remember that in 2003, during the Iraq War, there were countries like France and Germany who did not go along with the Iraq war. There were still countries in Europe that said, no, we don't want to go along with that. They had to deal with that so that didn't happen again. So the transfer of power had not been complete. Now, in 2008, there is a major crisis. The capitalist economy crashes. And though those global corporations who had been the beneficiaries, had been the beneficiaries of the profits, nonetheless, when it crashes, it is the nation state that picks up the tab. The nation state bails out this crisis caused by those who had usurped their power, and this is going to have major repercussions later on. So, the transfer of wealth and power to global corporations had taken place, but power was not only financial power. Cultural, social, political power they have to achieve too. Otherwise, this idea of global governance would not prosper. In other words, if people were, if there was cohesion in society, that people identified with their own country, this thing about global power was going to have problems. People would end up not being happy about it, demonstrated against it, and so on. So, in other words, if there was to be a successful global governance, power could not only be financial, but power in all its manifestations, cultural, social, political. Otherwise, as I said, if people continue to identify with the nation state, there would always be the possibilities for dissent and for confrontation. So this had to change, and I have dealt with this in other videos. The nation state became more and more like a province, as it were, of the empire, and its leaders more like governors than independent sovereign national leaders. So social cohesion in individual countries had to be broken. So now we are going to see all those changes, mass immigration, the beginning of the woke ideology, slow at first. You remember that, for example, Obama in his first term did not agree with same-sex marriage at that point. Well, that's what he said anyway. Whether he did or did not is another matter, but that is what he said. So, but still, culturally, citizens were not there yet. I said slow, gradual change at first, but then it took wings, as it were, and in no time at all, it seemed to most of us, we could no longer recognize our own society, our own country, our own culture. society, the cohesion in society was divided now into different people's identities. Then, we had the gender and the race and so on. So society now is divided. Politicians, too, we began to notice that politicians somehow had changed. The political parties had changed. Before there were differences, perhaps not great, but we knew which party stood for what. Now it just seemed that the political parties were the same. How can they be the same? Well, they were all obeying a certain instructions, as it were, from that no longer had to do with the interest of the individual nation state. And Clinton and Blair in the 90s muddled those waters. They came, as I said, they appear to come to the center, but in terms of representing the workers, the traditional left, and they became, little by little, they moved from that, and they became really the minions of the global corporations. So more and more, it doesn't matter, political parties looked the same. What happened here? People were not recognizing their own country. What is happening, they wondered. And then, of course, the inevitable. No one is listening to us. No one is listening to our concerns. They no longer seem to work for us or to represent us, those political parties and those politicians. And the politicians, they seem to be more and more all the same. They looked the same. They sounded the same. They said the same things. It appeared as if they had been groomed. In other words, unless you were approved by the financial corporations, unless you were pre-approved by them, you wouldn't make it. They had to be willing to accept and to go along with things and to follow what was prescribed for them. And the more and more power is taken from the sovereignty of each country, the more the national politicians surrender. And the more and more pliable and flexible they seem to become. And stupid. And so they are chosen and, let's say, trained or groomed or selected and then appointed until now. Look at all of them. I don't think I'm exaggerating. Look at the Macrons, Trudeau, Rutte, Sanchez, Newsom, Blair, Cameron, Obama. They all kind of even look the same. The same with women. This is practically almost the same haircut. Easier. They selected the individuals that, for many reasons, could be manageable. Yeah. So, as I said, this is the neocon period. Then we have wars to benefit global corporations, finance, and so on. No accountability for banks failing. They had their people in place. So, 2016, people rebel. From 2008, the financial crash, from 2008 until 2016, all these changes going on that people did not recognize their country. They what is happening here? And they rebel. Brexit and the first Trump win. And now we have a war death between global corporations and global finance and the nation state. Now it is becoming obvious that that is the fight. People had reacted. People didn't like what they were beginning to notice, to perceive. Their countries, as a sovereign entity, they felt was disappearing or had already disappeared. And the battle is to be fierce. Look at the means employed here, not just economic, manufacturing abroad and so on, but culturally, but cultural, the changes too, especially. This is when the woke, the gender, the climate change, the COVID, the schools, the censorships, all that, to manage the population. Because you couldn't have people with a sense of country defying the global governance. And so we have the media practically all is taken over, and then we have the Facebook and the Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates representing always, as it were, the global elite. And the battles now are the battle is clearly defined. From 2008 until 2015, then we have also, I'm not going to go into that, but the Ukraine-Russia rejecting to enter into this game and becoming part of the global governance thing. So Russia says no. So there is a coup in Ukraine in 2014, you know all that. To fight and defeat and break up, okay, the only other country that could create a problem because of its nuclear power, nuclear capability. The only country really that could put up a fight. They tried everything to split up Russia, couldn't. Okay, so in this way, with the Russia thing, the globalists lost. And now the BRICS and all that, it seems that we're, now it's going to be two camps again with the BRICS and everything. But what is clear is that they could no longer control the whole world. That was gone with Russia saying no. So what they can't do now is to actually let the West too not go along with them. Yeah. So 2016 to 2024. So people reacted, Brexit, Trump wins, okay, against mainly global power. It doesn't seem to me that Trump necessarily knew in 2016 what the battle lines were. But the elites now actually, there is a movement, I think, between the elites. They begin to differ. They begin to disagree with each other. Still an empire, yes, but the benefits of the empire not all stolen to benefit the supranational finance global elite. That there has to be a sort of also a willingness to, let's say, share that power of those benefits a little with the country itself, with the United States. Not just to rob it blind, as they have been doing, more or less, but try to bring it back. In this section, we would have, for example, Elon Musk. We would have Peter Thiel. In other words, within the billionaires themselves, there is this little difference only the globalist corporations or the country as well. So I think that this is the side that has won the election now. The globalist corporations admitting a little bit, I don't know whether to say defeat is not really, but a slight defeat. They were willing to take a step back, as it were, to stabilize the whole situation. Why? They're not going to lose much themselves. What they might lose, they'll be able to recover it. That is not a problem. But I think they have allowed this truce by compromising on easing off on the cultural woke thing. And so what we have is that at the moment is that those people who thought that the woke ideology was a goal, an objective in itself, did not understand that there were only a means, the cultural means, I dealt with this in another video, the cultural means for the global elite to keep power. Their main thing was to break up cohesion, cultural cohesion of the country. So sovereignty, or let us say now, a share of globalist and sovereignty combined at the moment with this Trump win. In other words, what has happened? Why this truce? Well, these other billionaires on this other side, Musk and Thiel and quite a few others, I think they took the road that Disraeli, the British Prime Minister, took in the 19th century. The 19th century, workers were beginning to complain, to say, hey, this is, things are not working for us. With the elite holding all the power. And Disraeli saw that and told them, you must loosen your grip a little bit. You must let people benefit a little bit. You're not going to lose much, just a tiny little bit, just by letting people, not work 12 hours, perhaps 10 or perhaps 8, and perhaps some benefits, and perhaps a holiday, and perhaps this and that. In other words, you have to come down a little and compromise a little bit, otherwise you're going to lose it all in a revolution. Use your mind here. You cannot keep total control, because otherwise you're going to lose it all. That was Disraeli's position in order to open up to, the rest of the country benefit somewhat. And I think that this other group in the elite see that perhaps the country should benefit too somewhat, not just the global international finance. Okay, so 2024, Trump wins again. What happened here for him to win? Or, this is my question to you, did he just win, or did the others come to realize that they might have a point, that they might have a sort of a truce, and they will continue to benefit from it, okay? And so I think that they have accepted that. And so now you have Zuckerberg and Bill Gates and all these other representatives, at least from the media point of view, coming over to this other side, to this, pretense that they are now with Trump and so on. I think it's just the truth, okay? For a little while at least. Internationally, nothing much. Yes, the woke thing, no longer so powerful perhaps. A cultural truce, as I said. It's just a step back. live it out now, all the climate thing and the pronouns and the COVID and this and that and a million things, okay? No one cares anymore, and so now you're beginning to see that you're allowed to say things that you were not allowed to say before. In other words, the woke thing is off. They have given us permission, as it were, to ease off from that. I'll give you an example. This has been going on, 2 years ago, regarding this woke thing. 2 years ago, a company, Disney, I put here in my notes 2 years ago. No, this has only been in the last few days, actually. Said that it's going to go back to entertainment, what they always did, entertaining itself. Is now moving away from what it virtually calls inclusion policies and so on, or at least is going to trying to broaden their appeal, to go back to perhaps what Disney had always been. Disney, which abandoned its audiences and became sort of the pioneer in this ideology business, and actually has played a major role in this brutalization of the population. It was really co-opted by certain groups, lobbies, for many years, and it has since then been poisoning really young and old with all that nonsense. Disney's fall was actually staggering. In 2023, just as an aside, it was the company's 100-year celebration century, and they celebrated that, and it had plunged in that year. Most resounding failure, disastrous 2023. So now it comes up with the news that is relegating all this woke ideology very much to a second level. Unthinkable a few months ago. Well, a lot of people had been saying for a long time, the old thing, go woke and go broke. But that had been around for many years, but no one really was listening. Everyone knew that the woke virus didn't help costs, but financially, but they continued, and Disney insisted, and now they're saying they insisted so much, we'll go on with this, watch me, but profits could not be the only reason, they said, but now they have changed. And not only Disney. You have all seen it. Recently, Mark Zuckerberg, practically in sackcloth and ashes, contrite. Such an act of contrition for things past. Again, I don't necessarily buy it. I don't mean I don't believe that he was going and he is going to allow more variety, that he's not going to loosen his grip. Yes, I do believe he will. I don't think he's trying to mislead me on that. I think he will be more flexible. What I don't accept are his reasons. I don't think that his commitment is permanent. He will go back to doing the same thing if required. More about this later. A person who for so many years was a complete, total stand-bearer of censorship, networks of repression, really, of the slightest dissent, has come out asking forgiveness practically and saying that it was the government and so on. As if he had been a mere passerby, in this road of censorship. By chance, it was forced by the Biden government, the deep state, the FBI, and that whole panoply of deplorables, etc., etc. The globalist censors. Doesn't matter. The point is that he caved in. In any case, now he renounces and abhors his past, denounces the pressures to which he had been subjected, and appears to make a truly surprising turnaround. What I'm saying is that never mind now the moral judgment whether what he says now is to be believed or not. That's not really important. The important thing here is that we do perceive, do we not, what is happening as a symptom of this underlying movement, of what is really behind all this. He has even dared to suggest that one must recover one's masculinity against the progressives, the progressive construct of the castrated male and this sort of eunuchoid world that they had created in society, and which we had to endure. He says that masculine energy has to come back to companies, to the world of work. The most significant, the most decisive is that the biggest corporations themselves, the biggest corporations of financial capitalism, the globalists, have also made spectacular backtracking on that issue. Woke, the backbone, the very marrow of how the whole woke thing started, climate change and all that madness, that's unbelievable. They are actually retreating. It came out about 8 or 10 days ago. BlackRock withdraws its support to the UN, its support to the UN on its climate change goals. The largest investment fund in the world manages assets that are sometimes 3 times, sometimes more, equivalent to about 3 times the GDP of many European countries. It's now going to stop supporting the ecological objectives of the UN. This is major. Especially when BlackRock, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Bank of America, Citibank, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan, they had already announced the same decision in the same way. What happened here? Have they seen the light? Of course not. Have they fallen off the horse on their way to Damascus? For sure, no. Okay. They're the same companies. They're the same corporations. They're the same scavengers. They have always been. But it turns out that these past November 11th, needless to say, in the Republican Donald Trump's hand, a few governors in the United States, in Republican states, sued a few corporations, among which was BlackRock, for having caused the rise in energy prices, due to their support for the restrictive policies in the production of coal, which translates in that increase in energy prices. So BlackRock became very reasonable. Somehow they couldn't, I don't know, they couldn't bribe, or they decided not to bribe judges, etc. I wonder why they didn't, or they couldn't. Anyway, all these companies. So climate change thing gone. And since this was the skeleton upon which all the other meat clung on, gender ideologies, racial quotas, etc., etc., all this is now going to change. How will this affect other countries? The European Union, for example. The European Union, they're corrupt, yeah, but I don't think they've got the memo of what is happening. And that seems to me, it looks as if that is the case, but it can't be. They can't be that stupid. So I can't figure out what is going on, but they insist on continuing on as if this truce hadn't happened in the heart of the empire. I can only assume that they were okay being the minions of the global corporations, but they're not perhaps too happy about the country, the United States, sharing in this empire. In other words, they're okay with global governance, but not with the United States becoming again the empire themselves, together with the corporations, of course. No one's going to throw them out, but to benefit the United States as a country. I think there is a lot here. I need to think about it a little bit more. But they will be forced to eventually, but they will come to different conclusions gradually. But for the moment, they are still fighting this truce, this change from just global corporations to, yes, global corporations, but the country itself. That is what I leave it, because I don't have any more time. Otherwise, already 42 minutes. Okay, thank you so much. I'm going to do another one tomorrow on general impression, bits and pieces of everything that went on during the inauguration and the speech and people and all kinds of things. Okay, thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.